Good afternoon, welcome to BSides Las Vegas. This is the Musing of an Accidental CISO. We'd like to thank our sponsors, our Inner Circle sponsors, Critical Stack and Valley Mail, and our stellar sponsors, Amazon, BlackBerry, and Silence. If I could please ask you to put your phones on silent during the talk, and towards the end, you'll be able to ask questions in the last 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Before I begin, I just want to say thank you to the organizers of BSides Las Vegas for putting together an amazing event. I look forward to this every year, and every year it seems to get better and better. So I'm super psyched to be here today, and I want to thank all of you for closing out the day with me. So my name is Brian Markham. I'm currently the Assistant Vice President for Information Security at the George Washington University in Washington, D.C. GW is a private research university located in Washington, D.C. It was founded in 1821, so it's a fairly old organization. It was founded by an act of Congress, and it's the largest private landowner in D.C. What that means is that my security scope encompasses like over 150 buildings. It's actually, the university can best be described as a city within a city. It's because it's got a little bit of everything. It's got residence halls, restaurants, classrooms, parking garages, a basketball arena, a museum, and really pretty much anything that you can name. Trust me, we seemingly have one of everything on our campus. So managing security for an organization that is this large and diverse can be really challenging, to say the least, but I get to do it with an amazing group of professionals, not just in security, but across the university, which makes it pretty easy and pretty fun too. Just as a side note, I would encourage any of you that are curious to maybe work in higher ed security for a little bit, because it is an experience that you probably won't forget. You will, if you like weird networks and crazy stuff and users that do seemingly everything, like, you'll like security in higher ed. Or maybe just stick to like Fortune 500 or whatever, because it might be easier. So ever since my dad put me in front, this was my first computer, it was an Atari 800 XL. Ever since my dad put me in front of a computer for the first time, I've been fascinated by computers and technology. Other than wanting to be a professional baseball player when I was a kid, literally the only other thing I wanted to do was work in technology. But when I was a kid, I didn't know what that meant. And as I got older, I started to realize that technology is changing our world. It has changed our world, that it will continue to change our world. And if we can't trust it, then it's all bullshit. You know, we have to do a better job of getting trust out of our technology. And that's why I love this community, because that's stuff that we're all dedicated to doing. So I consider myself to be pretty lucky through all the twists and turns that I made it here in front of you today. Because like I said, when I was younger and I was trying to break my own programs that I was writing, I didn't know that security was a thing. I didn't know that this would be something that people would pay me for. But here we are. So kind of at this point, I want to just tell you, this talk really isn't about me. It's about you. That there are things that I've learned the last couple of years on my path that I wish I knew 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I wish that someone had given me a manual and said, you can be better at your job, you can be better at what you do if you think about these things and consider these things and maybe do these things. And when I was thinking about what I could possibly contribute to the community in this talk, I really thought about, well, what if I tried to share some of that knowledge that I've learned on this journey to give them that manual that maybe I never had. So I'm not here to convince you to take a different career path. Like, management is not for everybody. It happened to work fine for me, but I know that there's a lot of people that are like, I never want to be a manager, and that's cool. It's a lot of work, and some of that work is work that honestly some people just don't like. But there are some things that if you think like a CISO, if you think like a manager, you'll get better jobs, you'll get raises and promotions, you'll be able to sell your ideas better, you'll be able to get tools that you want. So these are all things that you can do by basically letting me infect your brain for the next like 20, 30 minutes. So hopefully we can do that together. So has anyone here ever had a bad boss? Yeah, I mean, I've had a bad boss, and I never wanted to be one. I used to see managers behaving badly, doing things that were embarrassing at best and ethically corrupt at worst. And I was just like, my first IT job when I worked help desk, I just thought to myself, if I ever get that opportunity, I'm gonna be the opposite of that person. I'm gonna make my team feel great about the work that they do. I'm gonna know everyone by their first name. That's really hard to do. But I've been lucky that I've had some people in my career that have shown me the way to do that. So I want to talk about just recent past, just with what's happened in my career. My last boss, we'll call her Amy, she exemplified all those things that I wanted to be. She was calm under pressure, she was well respected, she was humble, and she always made time for people. But she was also really direct and decisive. My favorite thing about her is when you'd go to her and say, "Did you hear that they're trying to do this thing with this project?" And she would just look at me and say, "No." And you would know that she was serious about it. Like, they were not getting that thing, like, over her dead body. But you wouldn't ever meet a person, a kinder human being, and one that was incredibly technical but very humble in the way that she presented herself. So she also understood how the business worked. So she wasn't just a geek. She was someone that really understood how our university worked and how we as security professionals had to operate in order to be successful in that environment. So one day, Amy told us that she would be moving on to another role, and 5 minutes later I'm in the hall with my CIO and I'm the interim CISO. I didn't want to lose what my team had built. I wanted to be the one at the wheel. I didn't want anyone else to grab the wheel and drive it off the cliff, so I said, yes, I'm in, let's do this. I wanted to not only keep going what we had, but to build it and do better and really create that legacy. But then it kind of dawned on me, holy fuck, and it got real really fast. And I'm gonna talk about some of those things. So CISOs have to worry about so much stuff, and I know none of you are gonna be able to read this. It was just the word cloud app that I used was just not really very good. But just go with me, there's a lot of stuff there that we have to worry about. The vendor buzzwords and Gartner reports and budget and projects and roadmaps and performance reviews and APTs and the latest malware and explaining what happened with Capital One to people that aren't technical, and all that stuff is happening all the time. So for the sake of simplicity, let's just kind of break things down in like two categories, strategy and operations. So for strategy, just like thinking big picture, when someone says like, well, what's your strategy? I usually answer that question with a series of questions. Well, what are our business goals? What is our, in my case, my university, but in your case, your organizations, what are you actually trying to achieve? You trying to grow revenue? Are you trying to roll out new product? Are you trying to expand internationally? In our case, we want to create a better experience for our students. So those are our goals. Well, what are our risks? What's going to prevent that from happening? How's that going to go south? And keep in mind, none of this has really anything to do with technology at this point. We're just talking about the business. And then how do we address those things? How do we address those risks? And now it starts to get a little bit more with security, right? Like, so if we want to create a great experience for people, how do we do that? Well, we want to attract really great students. If we're on the front page of the paper because our network is a cesspool, we're getting DDoSed, we had ransomware, people, the best students aren't going to want to come to us. Researchers aren't going to be able to get grants, which means that students that want to go to university to do research aren't going to want to come to GW. So this is really important to the guts of how we operate. And I'm proud to say I think most of the people on my team would be able to tell you, these are our business goals, these are what our risks are, and this is what we actually do to counter those risks. Kind of going a level below that, the questions are like pretty easy, and you guys can apply this to your own organizations. I think all the time about what we're doing, how well we're doing it, what can we stop doing, what do we have to start doing, what skills do we need to do those things, and what tools or technology will we need. So if you think about it like a recipe, like you're baking a cake, you need a little bit of this, a little bit of that, you might not need this based on what you're making. So it's kind of that, and I'm thinking about these things all the time because there are some things that you want to invest more in and some things that honestly, if you're going to invest in something, you are going to de-invest in something else. I think there's a great quote, I think it's a Drucker quote that's if you want to start doing something, you gotta stop doing something else. So I'm thinking about that all the time. Kind of going into the operational and like what I'll call is CISO ops. This is like basically like how I spend my day. It doesn't seem that fun, but again, if you care about something and you get to take that seat at the wheel, it actually is a lot of fun. I'll just pick, I know you guys can read the slides, so I'll just pick a couple things. You know, when someone comes to me that's, hey, this thing is really cool, we want to give this a shot, we think this could really save us time or create a better result here, say, okay, tell me why it's important. And then I get to go to management and create that business case and make that pitch. I'm pretty good at pitching. I I have got a pretty good track record. So I actually like that. I like the challenge of being able to go and say, if we were to go and buy this, whether it be anti-malware, threat intel platform or whatever, be able to go to them and say, this is how it's going to make our team better and more capable. So I love that. Probably the part that I love the most, though, is the coaching and mentoring part, where I actually get to work with my team, take an interest in their career. If they say, hey, I really want to get into this, it's like, well, there's a training for that. Or have you gone to YouTube and checked out this talk? So being able to have those conversations with them is just awesome, because it's a partnership. They have to do the work, but me as that leader, I have to take that interest in them so they feel supported, because this industry is really hard, and even the smartest people are going to have doubts. I was just talking to a friend of mine who has more knowledge in his finger than I do in my entire brain, and he tells me that he doubts himself all the time, and I'm like, well, if he doubts himself, do any of us have a chance? But imposter syndrome is very real, and I think all of us to some degree question our abilities. So having that support structure really, really helps, and I hope all of you have leaders in your lives that give you that support. So there are just some things that I'm going to talk about. Does anyone know who this band is, by the way? I'm dating myself. I'm going to show all of you how old I am, but this is the Descendants. So just a couple things, like observations that I want to just impart on you, that you guys can, I think, apply to your own work. When you're a manager, you're always on stage, always. Every word you say is listened to, written down. Every word matters. The pauses matter. The things you don't say matter. Your emails matter. You're always on. And I knew this, but I don't know that I was completely ready for it at first. When there's layoffs happening in other parts of the organization, and there are people legitimately concerned about their jobs, I'm the one that has to tell them, don't be concerned. And I have to do that in a way where I don't want to have to walk it back after, right? How do you say, I'm pretty sure this is not going to happen, while in the back of your mind saying, well, that could change in an instant, right? So all those words matter. So when you start thinking about your managers, how many of you are managers in this room? Okay, so a pretty good number of you. So you guys get this. But for those of you that aren't, these are things that your manager may think about. And because I know you guys probably all pay attention, because you're probably detail-oriented, analytical people, so nothing gets past you. So you can tell with a pause, uh-oh, what did that pause mean? For anyone that's studied micro expressions, if you've looked into social engineering, I do that with my managers. What did that thing mean? I saw that. So staying calm in the face of stressful situations, you're going to just have to walk into fires, and you're just going to have to deal with the heat. It happens all the time. And you can't flinch, and you can't show them that you're stressed or that you're scared. You're always going to have doubts, but you can't show it, because again, everyone's watching you. The moment you show it, the moment that you show that weakness, they're going to think you don't know what you're doing. And so for me, I've tried really hard to be prepared for that moment, and take a deep breath, get the information, don't jump to conclusions, rely on my team, rely on the information, and then let's go have a tough conversation. Again, something that I didn't necessarily know that I would be good at, but I kind of surprised myself that I tend to stay a little bit more calm probably than I am right now, to be honest with you. Taking care of the team, like I said before, this is really my favorite part of the job. Sometimes you just have to put people on your back and say, get in, this is where we're going. Part of the work is that you have to see 360 degrees, and someone that's focused on malware or on pen testing or doing IR or vulnerability management, they're not seeing the 360 all the time. In bits, maybe, but all the time, no. That's kind of my job. So sometimes I have to navigate my team through things that are not easy or not obvious. And at those times, I really like this picture, because I do have to just put them on my back sometimes and say, you guys just have to trust me. And then it's just up to me to deliver, and be that trustworthy person that I do endeavor to be. There was this tactic, so I'm ex-PwC. For anyone that's worked in Big Four consulting, they kind of infect your brain with things. And one of the things that they really infected my brain with is this idea called teach, don't tell. Whereas if you're working with someone, you don't tell them what you want them to do. You basically ask them questions until they tell you what you want them to say. So Hey.
I have a request for a sousaphone
Amazing.
and a DeLorean.
That isn't so inside B-Sides Las Vegas baseball is when you put in when you respond to the call for proposals, you get to ask for like anything, and I was just like, how about a sousaphone or a DeLorean? And they literally just gave me one. So that's amazing. Thank you so. What's your name?
I'm Damon.
Damon, thank you so much.
Pleasure to meet you. Thanks for talking.
I was terrified because I don't drink, so if you were going to bring like a shot glass out, I was going to be like,
That's the other people up the road.
Yeah, good. This is amazing.
Unless you ask for it.
Yeah, I'm not taking this off all weekend. Yeah. So this idea of teach, don't tell is incredibly effective because if someone asks you how to do something and you just tell them, you really haven't taught them how to fish. They just are like, what did he say again? But if you ask them, it's like, hey, I'm having a problem with this thing. What do you think? The first thing I say is, well, what do you think? Because most of the time they know. They're either just not confident or they're not sure, and you have to be there. You have to be that pillar for them because it's in there. And sometimes when it needs a little bit of calibration, sure, give them that calibration, but for the most part, if you've done your homework and hired smart people and let them be them, the answer is going to be there. You just have to allow them to find it inside of them. Telling stories. Telling stories are incredibly important. People have been telling stories for as long as there have been humans. And I do this all the time because stories are memorable. Stories make people feel something. If you go and just talk about the latest, BEC wave that's been out there, business email compromise wave that's been out there, okay, fine, there's more phishing, awesome. But if you tell a story about a woman that was on a dating site and fell for a romance scam and sent all of her life savings to this man that didn't exist and was actually a Yahoo boy in Nigeria, that's a story that people will remember for a long time. So, and that's a story that I was told, and so I have remembered that. I was told by a gentleman from Agari. He told us a story about how he and his company, you're from Agari?
Yes.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Actually.
I should remember his name because he was awesome, but I don't, I'm sorry.
Is it John Wilson?
It was, yeah. Yeah, so telling stories are incredibly powerful, and it does sound cheesy, and ignore my SpongeBob picture, but finding pictures to describe some of these ideas is harder than you might think, to be honest with you. Telling stories is incredibly powerful, especially when we're dealing with incredibly complex technical topics, and generally people that don't have the knowledge that we have. So that's something that I do all the time, and I found it to be pretty effective. The next thing is I question absolutely everything. I probably ask too many questions. I know most of you in this room would probably describe yourselves that way too. I don't leave well enough alone. I don't assume anything. You really can't, because the one thing you don't ask will be the thing that burns you. So I ask questions. I'm genuinely interested in things, not just superficially, but if someone's doing a project, it's like, oh, tell me about that thing, right? Like, how does it work? I'm not afraid if someone's like, well, how do you not know how that works? It's like, I'm management, dude. I don't know anything. Like, I'm pointy-haired boss. So I ask questions to learn as much as possible, not just to know how things work, but to understand how it fits into the big picture. So I can then go back and explain it. If someone asks, well, why are they doing this? Why are they doing this upgrade? Why are they doing this replacement? Why are they migrating the service? I want to know all that. Maybe in some cases I don't have to, but I don't know how you shut that part of your brain off. So here we are. The next, stay sharp. A lot of people have told me that when you get in the CISO role, you don't have to go to Black Hat briefings anymore. You don't have to read blogs. You don't have to do labs anymore. And that's fine. That probably works for some people. It doesn't work for me, though. I still like coding. I like reading technical blog posts. I like doing labs and CTF challenges. It's fun for me. Like, maybe it shouldn't be my hobby, but I like it. And it helps me understand things when they happen in the news. It helps me put it into context so I can actually understand it and explain it. And I can have better conversations with my engineers and my teammates. They know that I'm not just reading Gartner Magic Quadrant documents and writing management briefings. They know that I'm at least making an effort to respect the craft and respect what it takes to be good at those jobs. And when I can ask better questions and have better conversations with them, I feel like I'm kind of honoring the work that they've put into their craft. Making decisions is just, I'm making decisions every day. Everyone's making decisions every day, but in my case, I have people just staring and being like, well, what do you think? Right? And like I said earlier, a lot of times my answer is, well, what do you think? But I always have an opinion about something, and I have to make difficult decisions. I have to allow applications to go live that I know have vulnerabilities in them, and it sucks, right? But I understand what the business need is, and security has to enable the business. So we say yes. And then on the back end, we figure out how we're gonna make it better. So I'm making decisions all day, and a lot of them are difficult, but it's part of the job. It's also lonely, right? Like no one else on the team is doing what I'm doing. And so I think if there's a takeaway from this slide that I can impart on you, people on my team ask me how my day is going. And they might think that that's like corny, and it maybe sounds corny, but it helps. Like, it really matters that they ask me like how I'm doing. Are you doing okay? You seem stressed. One of them says to me like, you look tired, and it's like, thank you very much. I probably do. But that little bit of feedback, that question, really goes a long way. So I hope that you have leaders, in your lives that you would ask that question to, because it really does make a difference. And I think this is something that all of us can relate to. We stand for things. We stand for things that don't always make us the most popular people. We have to blacklist things sometimes because they're really scummy. We do assessments all the time on mobile applications that collect way too much data, and we blacklist them. And people don't like it. And it's like, we stand for stuff, and we have to be there to support our user community, and sometimes it's gonna mean people aren't happy. But the best that we can do is explain why we made the decision and stick to our principles. It's hard to be principled when the easy thing to do is to just let the bad thing happen and keep people happy. But I feel like me and all of you in this room aren't those kinds of people. I feel like, we're here on a weekday spending our time, at night when we could be drinking or having dinner or with our families. You're here to immerse yourself in this. I feel like we stand for something, and that can be hard, but we stand together. My team stands with me on these things, and I try and stand with them too when we have to make difficult decisions about things. So at this point, I kind of want to talk about some specific things from my infected brain that maybe you guys haven't thought about before. For the people in management, you guys probably do get it. So maybe this will be a rehash, and I'd love to hear comments after. But these are things that you can do to be more effective if you are an engineer or an analyst, to just have a better experience as a security professional and in your workplace. So the first is, and I know how boring this sounds, like I know, but figure out how budgeting works in your organization. Figure out how something goes from an idea to actually being paid for. It sounds crazy, but like it wasn't that long ago that I was literally like, I have zero interest in that. But it's literally the ticket for how you can get anything done. If you want to buy something, knowing how you actually get that thing funded is super important. Because just like anything else, you can't hack anything until you know how it works. So when you figure out how this works, you can hack it, you can make it work. You know how many times I've worked out backroom deals with finance people to get things? Like, it's just because you know how the process works. And those people that don't know how it works don't get things. I have 8 people from my team here this week. 8. It's because I know how to ask. So it's really important. Lesson 2, always be making people better. People make me better. They challenge me. They teach me things on my team. It doesn't matter that I'm the manager. So I pay it forward, and I try and make them better too. I question them. I give them honest feedback. I try and be transparent with everything that I do. All of you can do something to make other people better, whether it's someone that you just meet at this conference or this weekend at DEF CON, whether it's someone at a local meetup, whether it's someone in your workplace, you name it. You can always be doing more to help make people better. And that really just enriches your life more than any, people that find CVEs, report CVEs, awesome. Like, that's really great. But in 40 years, if someone can say, I had a great career because Brian gave me a shot, I'll take that. And I'm fortunate that I think that there are a number of people that would say that about me, and I hope that there are people in your lives that would say that about you too. The next one is, don't bring problems, bring solutions. This is really what helps you level up in the eyes of your peers and your management. If there are tough problems and you say, this is what I think we should do, and you're not afraid in that moment to be wrong or to get shot down. Because people that come to me and say, what do you think? That happens all day. But people that come to me and say, we have this problem and this is what I think, more often than not, unless it's completely crazy, we can't afford it, or it's gonna get me in trouble, I'll just say, I trust you, let's do it. So don't miss that opportunity to get your ideas to the forefront and make them a reality. I always say to my team, we invent the future together. It's not gonna be anyone else. We decide how secure this place is gonna be, and may the best idea win. I hope that you guys are all in situations where you get to do that too. The next one kind of dovetails nicely with that, and that is get uncomfortable. I got thrown into the deep end, and I swam, but I see a lot of people that are really complacent and they don't want to challenge themselves, and really, that's not good for your career, really for your life. The keynote speaker this morning at Black Hat talked about how he was afraid of flying. So what did he do? He learned to skydive. That's an extreme example, but I think it's a good one. We don't really get over our fears until we face them head on. And getting uncomfortable is how you do that. So if there's a thing that you suck at, that you don't know anything about, go learn that thing. I didn't know anything about AWS a year ago. I knew nothing about it. I had never done anything in the cloud. I had like a free account, but I hadn't really done anything. So I made it a point to go learn as much as I could about security in AWS. And now I know enough to be really dangerous, to the point where I've built my own VPCs, and I've got way too many S3 buckets and databases, and basically just test labs that I use to test things out and stand things up for like open source projects. But I had to walk that road on my own. No one was going to do that for me. I had to get uncomfortable and feel like a moron when I was reading white papers and doing training slides. But that's instructive, and it's how you get better. The next one, and this is maybe the most important one for this room, is to advocate for yourself. I can't tell you how many times people have come to me and said, I would ask for more money, but I'm afraid I'm gonna get fired. Can I just tell you, I've never heard of anybody getting fired for asking for more money. Like, if you do, you may work for a really vindictive person or organization, because I can't imagine having that reaction. If you want a promotion, make it clear that you want a promotion. Don't expect it tomorrow, but say, if you're a security engineer, I'd really like to be a senior security engineer. How do I get there? Let's have that conversation, right? I really want to be making this much money. Let's have that conversation. I can't help you if you don't tell me. And the worst thing would be to let someone walk out the door because they're afraid to ask. It breaks my heart when I see someone leave our organization and they say, well, I really wanted to work in security. And it's like, you never talked to me. I have 4 people on my team that were internal, and they came up to me in the hall and said, I want to work in security, how do I do it? I said, do X, Y, and Z, and let's talk, and they got a full-time job. So you have to advocate for yourself. You can't see it as bragging. You can't see it as wanting too much. People will give you as much as you ask them to give. So it's okay to ask for a little bit more, and it's okay to advocate for yourself. Because if you don't do it, as a manager, I can only do so much. If I think that you're happy with what you're making, it's like, oh, they're pretty happy, but they might not be happy. So we have to have those conversations. So I hope you're all comfortable having those conversations. And then finally, you are the culture. People think the manager does have a major role in determining team culture, team communications, and really kind of the ethos of who a team is. But it's more than that. A team is made up of a group of people, and a group of people can make that great, or they can make it really toxic. And a manager can't fix toxic workplaces unless they just get rid of the problems. So we all have a part to play in building a great culture. Don't look to someone else to build that. If someone's acting out and making something a toxic workplace, you can have that conversation with them. It's not just the domain of the manager to have those conversations. In some cases, it's even more effective to get it from a peer than it is a manager, depending on who the manager is. So the thing I want to impart to you here is really own that culture, and if things aren't the way you want them, you can make them that way. You really can. I mean, I know it's hard. It's supposed to be hard, because if it wasn't, we'd already have done it. We'd all work in amazing workplaces that were super healthy and supportive, but I know that we don't. So we have to be that change we want to see. So kind of like I said at the beginning, I know I talked about myself and my journey on this. It's kind of part of getting up in front of the room and talking. But really, this was about you. I say this kind of tongue-in-cheek, but I've reached the mountaintop. I don't want another promotion. Information security is part of me. Computer and network security is part of me. I can't go work another IT job. I might go work another CISO job, but this is like kind of part of who I am. I'm not here to get another promotion or make a name for myself. I'm here to share what I've learned so that you all can go and get that job that you want, get that role that you want, achieve those career goals that you want. So I hope that I've told you something today that was new, something that made you think. And if anyone has any questions or wants to say anything, I'd love to hear from you. So thank you.
First of all, thank you for sharing with us. Two quick questions. What was the biggest challenge when you took on this new role, and why?
So I think for me, the thing that was probably the hardest, it was and continues to be reporting up. What I mean by that is I don't spend a lot of time with the Board of Trustees. I don't know them well, but every so often I have to create a presentation and a report to talk to them and talk to them about information security. That doesn't come easy to me. I mean, as you can probably tell, I'm pretty comfortable speaking, but when I think I know my audience, through my time, going to these conferences, I don't know that audience very well. So it's been challenging to do that. And I've tried really hard to edit myself, because my first inclination is I want to put together a PowerPoint presentation and I want to talk about threats, I want to talk about risks, I want to talk about what we're doing about it, and then I step away and I look at it and I say, they don't understand any of these words. And it's like, rewrite it. And I have to do that, and then I have to rewrite it again, and then it goes for edits, and then I have to rewrite it again. So that continues to be really challenging for me. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I think I've done okay. I'm really looking forward to being much better.
So you have a lot of great advice about being able to advocate for yourself. Can you give any maybe more tailored advice to people who are more likely to be looked down upon for advocating for themselves? Women, people who aren't white, perhaps, who get penalized for standing up too hard for themselves.
That's a really tough question. I can only give my perspective. I think all of us deserve a community and a workplace that takes care of you for who you are and respects you for who you are, whoever you are. However you identify, whatever you look like, what matters is what's here. And what's here a little too, Intention matters and brains matter. And if you are in a place, if you're in an environment that's abusive and looks at the color of your skin, or how you identify as how you should move up and what you're deserving of, it may be time to make a move. I can tell you my team is almost 50% women, and almost 50% of them were not born in the United States. And I see everyone as equal, and I don't think I'm a weirdo. And I've had many of them come to me say, I want to level up, I want to make more money. And I've said, I'm going to see what I can do, because I'm your manager, like we work together to achieve a mission, but I'm also here to advocate for you if you're willing to take that first step. So I think really in a roundabout way, I'm saying that if you feel discriminated against, if you don't feel like you can advocate without being retaliated against, it may be time to look. And there's a lot of great employers out there in the hall that, you know, I know that it's hard. Yeah. I hope that helps a little bit.
How you doing? Thanks for coming up today. My only question is, how would you describe your relationship with your peers, executives, board, and anyone of power and influence?
Yeah, varied. I've worked incredibly hard. So where I work right now, we have decentralized IT. So each school has their own IT shop. And when I started there was a very adversarial relationship. So my first goal was, okay, that just has to go. So I made a point to get close with as many of them as I could, whether it would mean setting up one-on-one meetings, going to lunch, joining a softball team and playing with them to get to know them on another level. And so I think I have pretty good relationships there. Internal IT, it can be hard because there's different incentives. People want to go live with things, they want to hit a deadline, and I say, hey, hold on a second. Has anyone looked at that? Does anyone know what that does? Does anyone know the data that it's collecting? And they're like, you again, right? So I think, and I've heard this all week about security being like the team of no, and it came up in the keynote at Black Hat this morning. We try and be the team of yes, but a lot of times it's yes, but. Let's talk about this, let's talk about that. It seems like it could work, just need a little bit more information. And I think for me, one of the toughest parts was get over not being liked. People are gonna like talk about you behind your back. People are gonna make stuff up, and you just have to get over that. And it's more important to be respected than to be liked, I think, because you can't control if people like you or not, but I think in their heart, they know if you've got good intentions, if you do what you say you're gonna do, if you honor your word. I always try and do those things, and I let the chips fall. So, in short, I've tried really hard to build good relationships with people, so they will respect me even when we disagree, and it makes the disagreements a lot easier too, because you can have those tougher conversations when there's real trust.
Thanks for this talk. I really looked forward to it.
Thanks.
And it's better than I thought. You mentioned staying sharp, and I'm wondering, like, how do you try to stay sharp with all the different areas for all the different teams that you manage? Do you like cycle through and just focus on a thing at a time? Do you have areas where that you've just still neglected and you haven't gotten to yet? What's your plan?
That is an amazing question. I think I try and focus on the things that are, it's probably a bad answer, but it's true. I try and focus on the things that are most immediate. So just last week, the identity team at my university started reporting to me. I don't have a lot of experience with identity management, so I need to get up to speed pretty quickly, which means reading a lot. There's fundamental thinking about identity from a security perspective that I'm just not really well versed in. So that's how I'm going to be spending the next couple of weeks. But generally, I do hack the box labs. I read blog posts. I read detailed write-ups about malware analysis. I'm really interested in the work that EFF, Eva Halperin, is doing around stalkerware and spouseware. I'm really interested in protecting our students against that. So I tend to kind of move around a lot. I also tend to not sleep. It's not healthy, and I don't recommend it, but it's just kind of who I am. I just don't sleep. So I have a little bit more time to dive into these things. But yeah.
I have a few different questions. I'll rapid fire them and you can respond to whichever ones you have information on. One, soft skills, if you have any recommendations on people who are working on that. Number two, like time management. Like I heard one guy who said he does old work before noon and new business after noon, and I can't imagine like being that organized. And third, prioritization, like how you manage not just your internal priorities, but the priorities from other departments.
Yeah. Okay. So those are good questions. I want to start at the first one. Was it? That was soft skills. Okay. I would say the most important one is writing. You will be judged on how you write, whether it's your resume, your cover letter, or report. You will be judged on how you write. So it's really important that you write well. You don't have to be, Shakespeare, but you have to be able to put together a thought and have it be understood by whoever that audience might be. I'd say that that's really number one. Like doing things like this, speaking, being comfortable speaking, I think that that's really important. But some people like it, some people don't. There's some positions where you really don't have to do it that much. But I do think you want to be able to clearly express yourself in front of an audience. So let's leave it at that, because I know you have a couple more questions. I'd say maybe staying organized. I think for me, I probably have some pretty weird habits. I tend to, and let's mix the two questions together. I tend to make a list of the things that I absolutely have to do, the things that are basically due. And then I make another list of the things that I have to do but are like less important. And I basically am just adding and removing all the time. It's really important to not let email manage you. That's something that I've learned through years of failure. And more recently, I've found that I don't want to reply to emails after hours, because I don't want to be that guy. So it's actually really great that Google has now built in the scheduled send. So I schedule all my emails to go out at 8 in the morning. So if I want to get caught up on email, I don't feel guilty, but they all just go out at 8 in the morning. And then by the time I get to the office, maybe people have like replied. And so it's like, yay, something happened. So that's like a big thing for me. I think also having help. I'll give a shout out to my assistant. Her name is Karen. I was really reluctant to work with an assistant. I was like, I'm really not worthy of this. But she's incredibly helpful. She helps manage my calendar. I block personal time for myself to read, to talk to people, for whatever I want to do and whatever I need to do. Because if you don't, it will just be consumed by meetings. So I tend to block out 2 or 3 weeks in advance as just like leave me alone time. And Karen knows that if something's really important, she can put it there. But no one else knows that. So that's kind of a tactic that I've used to kind of schedule my time as well. I tend to be pretty fiercely protective of my team's time and my time, because that's the thing that you just don't ever have enough of. I hope that answered your questions.
You mentioned staying sharp for yourself. What about your team who works for you? And we all deal with training budgets, and do more with less. YouTube is great, but it's how do you go back and dealing with the issues when you have a large, even a small shop that each year your budgets are getting thinner and thinner, but your skill sets aren't strong enough to keep up with the latest threats. What we're here for. How do you keep your team? And how do you make sure it gets spread out equally enough that, you said you invest in their time and invest in them, but how do you ensure that you're keeping their skills up and ensuring that, who gets the training dollars and who doesn't get the training dollars?
Right. So they all get the training dollars. So I think it starts with knowing what their goals are, knowing what they want to learn. How does that dovetail into what we need to do better, like what we're going to be doing in the future? So many people have come to me saying we need to spin up on cloud. So we bought subscriptions to a cloud guru, which is really great online cloud training if you haven't heard of it. So that was one way. But I think it really starts by being able to build that business case. So if we know that we're going to be moving to cloud and we know that our teams need to be better at it, it's really easy to build that business case that I need to be able to pay for training for my team. All the dots just connect. So I'm not really that smart. It's just I try and connect the dots to be able to get the thing that I want for my team. So, and you can hack some of it too, like we buy SANS credits ahead of time. So you can get a discount if you buy SANS credits ahead of time, and they discount it almost 50% if you buy online credits for like the online courses. So I'm able to save thousands of dollars just basically by planning ahead. Like if I know I'm gonna do a certain amount of SANS courses, I just buy them ahead of time. And then I get to save all that money. And then we use them and we buy more. So I think there's also local opportunities, like where I'm from, there's Nova Hackers, there's BSides Charm, there's BSides DC, there's BSides Nova. There's a lot of, there's monthly tool meetups where you get to meet people. I encourage people to get involved with those communities, to go to local meetups, to meet people, to network. I can't imagine, I can't even remember a situation where I told someone no, they couldn't do something. It just means I have to work harder to make the case sometimes. Like I said, there's a lot of people from my team here, but this is a chance for us to bash our brains in and get immersed in this subject matter. And then we go in there like we just drank jet fuel. We go back to work and we're like, let's do this. And that's an easy case for me to make, because this is hard work. And we get to have some fun and we get to learn too. So I hope that answered your question. And it does sound very like utopian, like, oh, I just make a good business case and the money just shows up. I know that organizations don't work that way, but like I literally worked at one of the largest consulting firms in the entire world before I went to GW, and I asked them to send me to SANS training, and they're like, I don't see how that relates to your job. It's like, oh yeah, me being better at security, like definitely shouldn't make a security consultant any better, totally. But meanwhile, then I go to higher ed and we like make those investments in people. So some orgs just don't get it, for sure. But that just means like, what do? We give up or we try harder? It's like, okay, let's try harder. Let's go at it a different route. Let's build a better case. Let's show how we can save money. Let's work out some deals with some content providers. Cybrary, Pluralsight, you know, there's great content providers out there now that will make a deal with you if you have the right conversation. Anything else? Okay. Thanks everyone, I appreciate it.